One day at the hospital where I am employed, I unexpectedly crossed paths with Jessica, a friend of my mom. With a surprised tone, she questioned my presence, stating that I seemed completely out of place. She warned me that if I came seeking a job, I wouldn't find one, instructing me to go back home. Jessica's unexpected comment left the surrounding doctors in a state of frozen uncertainty. I couldn't fathom what she was implying, hoping it wouldn't escalate into a serious matter that might already be too late to rectify. It appeared Jessica hadn't grasped that making an enemy out of me wasn't wise. However, silence was no longer an option. Addressing Jessica directly, I couldn't help but wonder if she was fearless or simply clueless. With a perplexed look, as if she didn't comprehend the meaning at all, she responded, "Huh? What are you talking about? Let me introduce myself. I am Emily, a 35-year-old mother with an active 7-year-old daughter and a mischievous 1-year-old son. My husband, John, is 2 years younger than me and works diligently as a nurse at the general hospital, caring for patients. I had a job too, but after the birth of our second son, I am currently enjoying maternity leave. Our family recently moved from a cramped 2-bedroom apartment to a second-hand house, bought with a loan. Despite its age, the house has a charming appeal, with a spacious garden for the kids and a soothing view from the rooftop balcony. There's also a lush park nearby where our family spends weekends, turning it into our weekend paradise. The story of Jessica and me began when our daughters, of the same age, started playing together in the park. Jessica, a surgeon at the same hospital where John works, wore designer clothes, and her daughter followed suit in renowned brands. Excited by the coincidence, she expressed a desire to meet my husband, leading to a planned tea gathering at our house. However, upon Jessica's arrival, she displayed blatant rudeness, appraising our belongings and questioning the history of our house. Her impertinent remarks continued during tea, questioning John's choice of being a nurse and suggesting financial instability. Each word cut deep, leaving us at a loss for words. After she left, I apologized sincerely to John for the uncomfortable experience. Concerned, I contemplated keeping some distance from Jessica in the future. John reassured me with a warm smile, suggesting that while it's good to make connections with neighborhood moms, it might be best not to get too involved with Jessica. As time passed, our family experienced new changes. After giving birth to our second son and celebrating his first birthday, I contemplated returning to work. With John's parents providing support with the kids, I found myself with some spare time at the hospital where my husband works, enjoying a hot coffee at the hospital cafe. I'd heard a familiar voice from behind. It was Jessica. "Oh my, isn't that Emily? It's been such a long time." "Hello, Jessica. How have you been?" "Good. What brings you here today? Are you here to see John?" I inquired. "Yes, just some errands. Maybe a job interview or something. It must be tough on just John's income, right?" Her words dripped with sarcasm, and she grinned smugly. Wanting to avoid a troublesome conversation, I responded lightly, "Well, something like that." However, Jessica continued probing with a searching gaze. "This hospital has various stores, right? So where are you working part-time? At the convenience store? Or maybe the restaurant?" After a brief silence, I curtly replied, "Sorry, it's about time for my appointment." I left the cafe quickly, moving swiftly through the hospital. I took the elevator to the top floor, heading to the director's office for an important job consultation. After about an hour of discussion, I made my way to the large auditorium of the university for my next appointment. There was an important announcement from the director scheduled that afternoon, with all the hospital staff gathered. On the way to the auditorium, I ran into John. "Oh, John, that's great. After the director's talk, let's go for lunch together," I suggested. "Sounds good. It's a bit of a walk, but how about pasta?" he offered with a smile. "The pasta place behind the hospital sounds good. I haven't been there in a long time. I'm actually looking forward to it." I agree happily. Lunch with my husband at the hospital was a rare treat. In the hallway to the auditorium, I ran into several doctors, engaging in brief conversations while exchanging greetings. John moved ahead quickly, and I followed at a leisurely pace toward the passageway leading to the auditorium. Along the way, I happened to meet some colleague doctors. "Emily, it's really been a while, and I heard you had a child. Congratulations from the bottom of my heart." Warm words of congratulations were exchanged. Another doctor joined in. "Emily, you were such a big help here. We've been in quite a stir since you left," he said with a laugh, hinting at the struggles. Then, another one asked with interest, "Is your return imminent?" Despite such inquiries, the reunion was comforting, filled with nostalgia and relief to see my colleagues well. But the atmosphere quickly changed. Jessica suddenly appeared and asked curiously, "Emily, why are you here? Are you heading to the auditorium by any chance?" "Yes, that's right. I have some business," I responded modestly yet clearly due to the presence of several colleagues. But Jessica's questions only grew. "But the gathering is only for doctors and nurses, right? Why would a part-timer be here?" she asked, not hiding her skepticism. Her remark brought silence to the corridor, a silence that seemed indicative. "A part-time lady like her?" a doctor muttered. "Is she okay, I wonder?" Another doctor murmured worriedly, not wanting to be involved in unnecessary commotion. I tried to weather Jessica's words. However, it seemed to only incite Jessica. "Why are you ignoring me? It's like you don't think at all," Jessica exclaimed with a sneer. "Lost your way? The auditorium isn't this way. If you're looking for part-time work, go the other direction." "Now please leave," she commanded, looking down on me. The doctors present were appalled by Jessica's behavior, but sympathetically, they began to stand by me, attempting to defuse the situation. The surrounding doctors raised their voices in unison against Jessica. Disappointment and anger were evident on their faces, and their voices contained a strong sense of rejection toward Jessica's actions. "Hold on, you! What kind of way is that to speak to Emily? Don't you have any manners? Apologize to her right now," they demanded, not just disapproving but reproaching Jessica's conduct. The doctors gathered, looking tense, and confronted Jessica, the atmosphere charged with tension. Jessica, faced with the united front against her, appeared confused and at a loss for words. What's going on? I just pointed out that she doesn't belong here. The meeting is only for relevant personnel, and she doesn't fit the bill, right?" She tried to justify her stance, but my patience had reached its limit. With a composed tone, but with content sharp as a blade, I addressed Jessica. "Jessica, you really are brave, aren't you? Or is it that you simply can't read the room?" I critiqued calmly. Unable to find a rebuttal, she stared back at me, perplexed. "Huh. What did you just say?" I calmly made my position clear. "You'll understand soon enough. The actions you took against me and your careless remarks, the serious consequences they could bring." The doctors present showed no sympathy for Jessica. "Look, your future is now utterly uncertain," they said cuttingly. "You might want to start looking for another job while you still can." They nodded earnestly to each other. Clearly cornered, Jessica was still unable to hide her panic and anger. "So why on earth are all of you defending this non-regular employee so much? I don't understand why you rate her so highly," she raised her voice. The conversation among the doctors echoed in the hallway. "Are you the new surgical specialist?" One doctor inquired. "So that's why you don't know Emily? That's quite pitiful," while another added, "Jessica," with anger on her face and indignation in her tone, retorted, "Can you explain what you mean by that?" Her anger stemmed from the belief that judging people by their professional standing, regardless of their duties as a doctor, was against human dignity. The fact that someone with such values was in our workplace was deeply shocking to me, and I couldn't help but feel distrustful. Jessica seemed unaware, but in fact, I was the very person she should respect the most. The other doctors completely ignored Jessica's questions and left her with cold stares, quietly leaving the scene. Then I stated calmly, "Well, Jessica, we can talk more about this later." You may find my husband's position as a nurse pitiable, but no matter how hard you try, you can never be like John. Besides, the fact that you find meaning in competing shows a great misunderstanding on your part. Jessica became flustered. Wait a minute. Who on earth are you? You're not just a part-timer, are you? She raised her voice. I smiled secretly and replied, as I've already said, you'll come to understand shortly. And with that, I hurried off toward the auditorium. As I entered the auditorium, a large number of doctors had already gathered, and the director stood in front of the screen. Thank you all for gathering here during your busy schedules. Today, I would like to discuss the future direction of our hospital. He began and then proceeded to make an important announcement. Seeing John in the crowd, he approached me and whispered, Emily, good timing. I happened to overhear a bit earlier. Was there some trouble with Jessica? Yes, she did point out something minor, but it's not a big deal, I replied. Interestingly, it seems she has misunderstood me for a part-time worker at this hospital, I replied. John looked incredulous and responded, No way, Emily, as a part-timer? We couldn't help but suppress our laughter at the absurdity of the situation. Amidst this, the director concluded the explanation of the annual business plan and moved on to a significant personnel announcement. As you all know, our hospital is well-staffed with an adequate number of doctors and nurses. To further improve the quality of our medical services, we plan to actively implement overseas training programs. The first training is scheduled in 2 months, and we will select 5 doctors and 5 nurses for it, he declared. This announcement was met with cheers from the attending doctors, and everyone was excited about the prospect. Overseas training meant an excellent opportunity to learn about the latest medical practices in the world. Since it was the hospital's first initiative of its kind since its establishment, everyone's eyes sparkled with the news. The director continued solemnly, yet with an undertone of expectation. Now let's proceed with announcing the names of the rest who have been selected. As he spoke, a silence of mixed tension and anticipation fell, and the names of the chosen 10 were called out one by one. Although John's name was not called this time, his expression did not show disappointment. He quietly watched with a sense of celebration as each selected individual stepped forward. Addressing the 10 lined up on stage, the director asked, Are all of you ready in spirit for the training? Please share a word about your enthusiasm and determination. He gently encouraged them. Each gave a brief, resolute speech, reaffirming their strong intentions. After everyone had spoken, it was finally Jessica's turn. With proper decorum, yet confidently, she said, I am truly grateful for this valuable opportunity for training. I aim to contribute to the further progress of our hospital with the cutting-edge medical techniques I will learn abroad, she said with a polished greeting. Afterward, she turned slowly towards where we were seated and continued with her unique assertive tone. However, this hospital has inexperienced nurses who continue to fail the national exam and impudent individuals who attempt to attend medical conferences despite being non-regular staff. I intend to improve and transform all these aspects. Jessica's provocative declaration changed the atmosphere of the venue, and the looks directed at her turned icy. Her words highlighted the hospital's tensions and how dangerous youthful overconfidence can be, especially the director's sharp gaze seemed to freeze the room, adding significant weight to the situation. The director, maintaining his composure, asked, Jessica, that was about those 2 sitting there, wasn't it? His smile was calm yet did not reach his eyes. You said there were unsuitable people mingled in here, right? Confidently nodding, she answered, Yes, exactly. There are those unfit for this noble assembly, she answered with conviction, remaining composed. The director responded, Street Emily, could you come forward, please? With this unexpected invitation, I, who had been merely an observer, suddenly found myself at the center of attention. Confused and starting to lose her confidence, Jessica questioned, Why? Why are you calling her name? She struggled to grasp the situation, and the director, showing disappointment towards Jessica, said with a quiet voice, Jessica, I am disappointed in you. Emily, please introduce yourself to everyone. Taking a deep breath, I recounted the beginning of my career, important milestones, and my temporary step back to become a mother. I continued, "Hello, everyone. It's been a while. I am Emily, the chief of the medical department. I apologize for any inconvenience my maternity leave may have caused, but I will be resuming my duties next month. I look forward to working with you all again." Jessica's voice couldn't hide her surprise. "Wait, she's the chief of the medical department?" Her eyes searched the room for confirmation. Indeed, as the head of the medical team, I had taken a 2-year parental leave to birth and raise my first son. The director, affirming the truth, added quietly, "By the way, Emily is my daughter." His words resonated in the room with undeniable clarity, defining the reality of the situation. Jessica's expression went from confusion to shock, her mouth agape as if to object to the reality, but no words came out. The room, filled with hospital staff, could not contain its reaction, and suppressed laughter spilled out at the unexpected turn of events. The director began speaking in a relaxed tone. "Jessica, for this upcoming overseas training, you have been assigned to be the team leader. Your deployment will be in a conflict zone in the Middle East. There is a shortage of both medication and medical equipment, and a very challenging situation is anticipated. It will be interesting to see if your abilities will be fully utilized, but don't worry, Emily will be there to support you. Learn as much as you can under her guidance." Proudly, Jessica responded with dignity, "I am a doctor too. Although I have no experience working abroad, my clinical skills and treatment records are first class. I will not allow myself to be underestimated." I replied to Jessica with a calm but firm voice. "Let me make one thing clear, Jessica. In the near future, I am going to take over the directorship of this hospital from my father. Do you understand the weight of this fact?" Jessica's expression stiffened, and seeing this, I continued, "Yes, it seems you understand. Well, depending on my decision, your future in this hospital may be affected." Jessica could no longer hide her agitation, and I calmly added, "I haven't heard such a thing." Jan intervened, calmly adding his words, "Jessica, we had not informed you about that matter beforehand. Your disrespectful attitude towards Emily may well be something you deeply regret in the future." Towards the end of the meeting, the director stated firmly, "Please, everyone, a bit of silence. Jessica, in the discussions here, in the end, results are everything. No matter how excellent you may be, that is just one aspect. What's important is the results you can achieve in this hospital, and on that front, I have great expectations of you." Jessica fell silent at the director's words, bowed her head, and nodded without saying anything. The director concluded with that, today's meeting is adjourned." As his words ended, everyone in the auditorium stood up and returned to their respective places. Stepping out of the director's office leisurely, I casually said, "Shall we go for lunch? I've got a craving for pasta today." Side by side with John, I started walking towards our favorite pasta place in the backyard, leaving the hospital building behind. As we were about to pass the small smoking area set up behind the hospital, I spotted Jessica, who appeared to be deep in thought, taking a drag of her cigarette. The moment our eyes met, Jessica awkwardly looked away. At that instant, a sudden event caught our attention. A loud crash sounded, and right before our eyes, a car had rear-ended another in an accident. Jan and I sprang into action immediately. The area was nearly deserted, so it was crucial for us to move quickly to help. "Are you okay?" John called out with concern and quickly checked on the people involved in the accident. One was the driver in the car that was hit, and the other was a pedestrian who happened to be walking by. Jessica also rushed to the accident scene, following us, but seemed overwhelmed by the chaos. Acting on her medical instincts, I began to give directions. "John, quickly get that man into a safe position and check his pulse." Jan moved promptly, following my instructions and beginning his actions. As an emergency nurse, John had been granted special opportunities to accumulate frontline medical experience, including attending surgeries conducted by me. I had trained him rigorously, and he had developed exceptional practical skills. I then directed Jessica with calm and clarity. Jessica, check if that elderly person is bleeding and assess their level of consciousness. However, Jessica seemed paralyzed by the seriousness of the situation, standing still without moving. My voice grew firmer as I insisted, Jessica, do you understand what I'm saying? Please respond quickly. Her voice had a hint of tension as Jessica replied, yes. What should I do? Her panic was evident, and instead of helping, it seemed to add to the confusion at the scene. I rebuked Jessica firmly yet patiently. Don't you know what to do in an emergency? I doubt you're even a surgeon. Jessica responded with an attitude that could be perceived as anger, saying, That's not true. There's nothing I can't do. However, her actions, though active, clearly lacked effective measures, and she was just bustling about the scene. I then looked to John. John, could you measure that elderly person's blood pressure and make sure there's no bleeding? I gave the orders with composure. John promptly replied, Understood, and began to prepare for controlling the situation. The accident scene began to regain some order with the swift response from me and Jan. John spoke to Jessica with an unusual sternness. Jessica, come over here and help, he directed. Jessica complained. What do you mean? A nurse asking for such a thing? But John cut her off. This is no place for someone who can't do anything. If you're not going to be of help in this critical moment where lives are at stake, please step back, he said decisively. Jessica was at a loss for words and stepped back from the scene silently. John reviewed the situation and reported to me, the vitals are stable, but there might be internal damage. We should conduct a thorough examination as soon as possible. As professionals, they demonstrated readiness to collaborate with other medical staff around them, doing their best for the patients. I directed the response with a steady demeanor. Let's begin the procedures then. The driver over there seems to be disoriented, but I don't see any serious symptoms. Let's move him out of here. I then turned to Jessica. Could you please call an ambulance on your cell phone? Despite my words, Jessica stood frozen, unable to move. I addressed Jessica with suspicion. Jessica, I'm speaking to you. Do you hear me? Jessica seemed confused, hesitatingly murmuring, what's the number for the ambulance again? Jan intervened. Just give me that phone. He stepped in and took over, arranging for the ambulance. About 5 minutes later, police and fire department personnel arrived, and the once chaotic accident scene started to be sorted out gradually. People gathered, including doctors, department heads, medical students, and even professors. But without being disturbed by this, I spoke to Jessica with calm and stern emphasis on the gravity of the situation. To be frank, Jessica, your actions earlier were more of a hindrance than a help. What exactly can you say you've accomplished? I posed the direct question. Jessica was silent, unable to answer. In the medical field, every minute, every second can determine the outcome. This is not a place to protect your ego. Jessica's voice was barely audible as she apologized, I'm sorry. The crowd at the accident scene quietly observed their exchange, and the director himself was also present. Jessica just seemed out of place and embarrassed. I continued, addressing Jessica, You've looked down on Jan as just a nurse, but the fact is your positions are different. There's no meaning in comparing you and John. He is one of the most competent nurses in this hospital. Can't you see now how powerless and insufficient your actions were in this situation? I confronted Jessica with the truth. Jessica retorted somewhat stubbornly, If I had more experience in emergency situations, I could handle it perfectly well. But John sensed the uncertainty behind her words and calmly exposed her vanity. You're always driven by a desire to have your accomplishments recognized. However, contrary to the superficial appraisal, your actual skills in the field are still immature. You've just demonstrated that fact yourself, he asserted. He continued, adding insult to injury. You say you'll gain experience in emergency treatment in the future, but this moment is also a practical situation. Given your current state, it's unlikely you'll have further opportunities to experience the field in the future. Jessica's confidence began to show cracks, and she seemed on the verge of tears, conscious of the surrounding eyes. Yet, the medical field, dealing with lives, demands proper judgment and strictness. Therefore, I had to convey a decision that would impact Jessica's future. Jessica, I regret to say this, but your name will be removed from the Overseas Training Program candidate list, I declared. Jessica was taken aback. I looked to the director for confirmation. Father, this decision is acceptable, correct? The director nodded deeply. No problem. This incident has given me a clear understanding of her. We have always selected trainees based on their grades, but it may be necessary to reconsider our selection system in light of this. His quiet but firm response marked a moment that signified a complete defeat for Jessica. With a calm but resolute voice, I advised Jessica, it's important for you to relearn from the basics. Only then will you have the right to compete at the same level as John. Also, take to heart the dangers of judging a person's worth by their appearance. While I considered letting you go from the workplace, I have decided to give you one more chance, the last chance. Make the most of this opportunity and show us your full effort. I advised Jessica, sternly yet justly. Afterward, they quietly left the scene, but the looks from the doctors around Jessica were cold, filled with disappointment and disapproval. Their evaluation of her future was seemingly already set. Weeks passed, and the long-awaited departure day for the overseas training arrived. Jen and I headed to the airport, excited to acquire new knowledge and experience. As for Jessica, I had heard that she resigned from the hospital just a month after the incident. She couldn't endure the cold stares of those around her and ultimately chose to prioritize her pride. Personally, I thought that it was for the best. A doctor who puts pride at the forefront doesn't deserve to hold patients' lives in their hands, and no one would want to entrust their life to such a person. On the way to the airport, I spoke to John with words filled with hope. John, let's use our abilities to turn this hospital into one of the most renowned places in the world. Jen, sharing that passion and reaffirming his determination, replied, That's right. I need to work even harder and obtain my medical license as soon as possible. And so I quietly vowed to myself once more my unwavering resolve as a doctor to fulfill my duties.